Hey guys, Mr. Yisley here. So we are on to lesson number 6 in chapter 6, which has all been about factoring to this point. And to this point, we've talked all about greatest common factor, and we've talked about how to find it among a list of terms. We've also talked about how to factor that out of an expression. Well, today we're going to move on to what's called factoring out a common binomial factor. Now, we've learned in previous chapters that a binomial is a two-term polynomial. It is a two terms. Bi again meaning two, like bicycle, two wheels. So this means two terms. So what we're essentially saying here when we're factoring out a common binomial factor is that we have a greatest common factor that is a binomial. It's actually two terms. And so we're going to talk about what that looks like and then how we factor it out appropriately. So let's take a look at example A here. So in example A, we've got A times the binomial of A plus 3 plus 4 times the binomial of A plus 3. So if we were solving this, we would just distribute each term in front of the parenthesis to the appropriate one, and we would simplify down and then combine like terms. But we're actually going in the reverse order as we've been talking about through this chapter. So our goal is to get it down to the simplest factors that we have. So what you may have noticed is that the parentheses themselves, both binomials, are exactly the same. So A plus 3 here and A plus 3 here. Well, if that is the case, then that makes that our greatest common factor, that these two things have in common. So what we can do in that case is we can just combine them into one, and we can just say, all right, A plus 3 is my first factor, my greatest common factor. And then we can take what's left over, which is the A here and the plus 4 here, the things that didn't get used. And we can actually combine those together to make our second factor. So our second factor would become A plus 4. And that's really all there is to factoring out a common binomial factor. Figure out what the common binomial is. That becomes your first parenthesis. Then whatever's left over, what you would have distributed, that combines to make your second parenthesis. So again, common binomial here was A plus 3, first parenthesis. What was left over, what we would have distributed if we were simplifying, which is A and positive 4, that becomes our second parenthesis. And that's really all there is to it. So let's take a look at the second example B. We've got x squared times the binomial of x plus 1 minus 5 or negative 5 times the binomial of x plus 1. Now again, for this to work, those parentheses have to be the exact same, which in this case, again, they are. Both are x plus 1. So that becomes our first parenthesis, so x plus 1. And then what's left over outside of the parentheses, x squared and negative 5 become our second parentheses, so x squared minus 5. And again, that's all there really is to it. Common binomial was x plus 1. That becomes our first factor. Second factor is what's left over, which is x squared minus 5. All right, well, I'd encourage you to try example C on your own, then check your answer with mine. So example C says r times the binomial of t minus 4 plus 5 times the binomial of t minus 4. So again, I see a common binomial of t minus 4, so there's my first parenthesis, t minus 4. My second parenthesis is what's left over, r plus 5. There we go. All right, well again, I'd encourage you to try example D on your own, then check your answer with mine. So example D says y squared times the binomial of y plus 2 minus 3 times the binomial of y plus 2. Well, again, common binomial of, goodness, keep breaking my lead, y plus 2. So that's my first parenthesis. To create my second parenthesis or my second factor, I combine what's left, which is y squared minus 3. All right, and that's really all there is to factoring out a common binomial factor. So if you have any additional questions, please let me know, but that should cover the first few problems of your worksheet.